In 2017, I was diagnosed with a variety of mental health issues. Everything from long-term depression, long-term fatigue, burnout, and specifically PTSD. A variety of different anger issues and whatnot were also coming out at that time. It culminated during my rescue work with Teton County Search and Rescue. Not necessarily the source, just where it happened to culminate. And so in 2020, I was nominated to do a PTSD push-up challenge, and I started sharing my path, started sharing my journey of the last 3 years up to that point. And so today I'm still on that path, and the treatment still continues, and I'm in a much different place. Again, it's a journey. And so I'd just like to share with you my journey up to that point and try to help you see what it's like for somebody to be going through that, and then ultimately how we can support others who are in that space. So enjoy.
Well, I don't like labels. 2.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with PTSD, depression, long-term fatigue, a host of other mental imbalances. And at that time, it was the first time I had really reached out for help. And while things initially got worse for me, I can tell you it was the first time I showed up for myself. And so I want to thank Megan Skidmore for nominating me for the 25 push-up challenge over 25 days, because 4 years ago when things started to get bad, I started to look at my diet even more closely, and then look at my yoga practice. And so one of the things I did pick up at that time was actually doing yogi push-ups, and started to focus more on me. So here's day 1 of 25, and if I'm gonna keep true to the whole game, it's Jimmy Bolin, 25 a day for the next 25. So here we go.
Hi everybody, day 2 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And what I would share with you today is that I started showing signs and symptoms of PTSD well before I was diagnosed. What originally started off as an overly ambitious attitude towards life slowly started to turn into frustration, then ultimately anger. And that anger resulted in occasional outbursts, and then eventually outbursts that were absolutely inappropriate. It creeps in on folks little by little. So with that, here's my 25 today. Hi everybody, day 3 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And today I would like to share with you, it's a complicated story in regards to why I suffered the trauma I did. You'll have to read the book. But it culminated for me during my work doing emergency services with search and rescue. And the combination of cumulative stress, the cumulative dealing with loss, specifically death, and then its connection to my work and my community, and ultimately that's where it finally bubbled up for me. And ultimately I started to relive a lot of things that I didn't have the tools to deal with at the time. And so those things came back, they needed to be rectified. So for all those folks that are still suffering and trying to rectify those things, here's my 25 for the day. Hey everybody, day 4 of the PTSD push-up challenge, and today I'd like to share with you in regards to the environment that I worked in. It was a high-stress environment, working around a helicopter, in, around, and underneath a helicopter. And in that environment, probably the most important thing is that you have to believe in yourself. And so as my signs and symptoms started to creep in, I started to lose confidence in myself, and that started to show because tears would well up. I would start to cry when I would get scared. And without an environment to be able to share that, I just kept stuffing it down deeper and deeper. And that worked for a while until it didn't, because then that ultimately resulted in a lot of crying, because it was a lot of emotion that was unprocessed. So for all those folks that are still shedding tears, still trying to figure out how to process some unkept demons, some emotions that they've stashed away, well, here's 25 for you. Hi everybody, day 5 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And today I'd like to share with you how my experience has changed my life. And I'd mentioned yesterday that I was stuffing down emotions on one side. The other side of that is that I was outwardly aggressive, and I was becoming very angry with people. And that culminated in 3 different events in a 1-week period for me, where I blew up on my search and rescue team, the team that I was responsible for training. I inappropriately addressed the team in a very aggressive manner. And then that same week, I also managed to address executive director of an organization that I'd been working for the last 12 years, and ultimately that became my demise with that organization. And then I also began the process of ending my marriage that week too. And while that happened in a 7-day period, and things started to get bad, that was only the beginning of it. And so for everybody out there who's struggling with their life falling apart and trying to figure it out, I feel like I was lucky from the standpoint that despite a lot of loss, I was able to figure out how to piece it all back together. And so for those that are trying to figure out how to piece it together, and for those that are still losing things, here's 25 for you today. Hi everyone. Day 6 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And over the past couple of days, I'd been talking about how I'd kind of been trying to stuff my emotions down. And a really good friend of mine who's a recovered addict has a good analogy, which is she would always say, well, you have to stuff your sad hole. And as brutal of a statement as it is, it illustrates it very well. And so I stuffed my sad hole with several different things. One of them is that I stuffed it with alcohol. And as a neurotoxin, suppressing your nervous system, and ultimately that's where your emotions are held, it works pretty well. 2, the athletic events, getting my heart rate up, giving me a little bit of adrenaline. The more depressed I was, the more physical pain I could endure. And then 3, cocaine. May seem a little odd to have the last 2 together, but they do the exact same thing. The blow's got a little more of an analgesic to it, so that does some numbing. And then I would prefer to have a little Valium to be able to go to sleep at night. That's going to sleep's a scary place. with that being said, I got those things off board right as things started to crumble for me, which was a really good thing. The thing I didn't realize though is that it was about to get incredibly worse for me, because all of my coping mechanisms that were holding the beast at bay, well, the emotional beast got unleashed, and that's when I really began to understand how difficult it was for people to give up substance, because you have to face some pretty dark demons of your own. And so for all those folks out there that are still trying to shake their coping mechanisms, that are still just suffering and just trying to get through every day and coping by using, here's a 25 for you. Hi everybody, day 7 of the PTSD push-up challenge, and over the past few days I've been talking about kind of this breaking point for me where my emotions were building up. I was using coping mechanisms to keep them at bay, and then once I got those coping mechanisms off the table, things started to get really bad for me. And specifically, what ended up occurring is that everything that I had been hiding from came back to haunt me. And so my flashbacks became a very real thing at that time. Sleeping became incredibly difficult. I was very, very unstable. I was erratic. I was incredibly emotional, and my anger had turned into pretty much constant tears. And so during that time, thankfully I had the support of a handful of friends. I lost a lot of friends through that process as my behavior changed significantly. So people started to I needed to have people in my life that were capable of accepting me for how I was. The other thing that I did during that time is that while I was receiving treatment, I was not receiving the right treatment. And so I started to seek out different forms of treatment. I ended up with a psychologist, a neurologist, and a somatic practitioner. I basically had a full team that was helping me find a new me. And luckily, I had the capabilities and the support in order to be able to afford that. And so for all the folks that are out there still looking to find the right help, for all the folks that are struggling financially to be able to get that help, and for all those folks that are looking for people to accept them for how they are, well, here's 25 for you today. Hi, everybody. Day 8 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And today I'd like to share with you a little bit more about treatment. And so in my experience, treatment isn't this one-size-fits-all package. It's actually really specific to the individual. And so while I managed to get a team of folks to be able to help me, the individuals that were in that team changed as my needs changed, and it was really important for me to keep control of what my treatment options were. And I was dedicated to the long haul when I went in at this point, and ultimately I was dedicated to trying to stay off medication as well, which I knew was going to take a lot longer. The other thing that's important to recognize is that it's not like you just jump into treatment and then all of a sudden you're fine. And so when I went into it, it's important to recognize that I had tried to reach out for help several different times. I'd worked with several different people, and it was never a fit for me. I was also not ready for it. And so this last time when I came into it, I brought my own practice into it as well. So
not only did I have multiple treatment options, but then I also built into a program where every day I would get up, I would meditate, I would do yoga, I would journal daily. I had a very specific exercise routine that I was doing, and then I was making almost every meal for myself. And those things may seem odd in terms of treatment, but ultimately it was me showing up for me, meaning I was showing myself how to love myself. And through those actions, I began to find somebody that needed to be taken care of. And so it was really the first time I started to show up for myself. So for all those folks that haven't found the right treatment, for all those folks who are still struggling to figure out how to get the treatment to work, well, here's 25 for you today. Hi everybody. Day 9 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge, and today I'd like to share with you, one of the issues in regards to my flashbacks that I was able to figure out along the line was that I was ultimately judging myself, and I was judging myself really hard for arguably a job that wasn't attainable. And so part of the process in order to be able to change that was changing my perspective, being able to look at myself differently, and ultimately, loving yourself and being proud of yourself. And so I know that is a common thread with both depression, PTSD, suicide, is that we don't think we're good enough. And so for all those folks that are still trying to figure out that you matter, well, here's 25 for you today. Hi everybody. Day 10 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And today I'd like to share with you what it's like, what it's like to lose a friend who takes their own life, and specifically the lessons that they left me with, despite the fact that I wasn't able to show up for them. And ultimately a teammate that I came onto the team with at the same time with. And we became close friends, only to fall apart because of what I was perceiving at the time was a very difficult person to deal with. And what I now understand is that he was sick. And I only see that because I acted in a very similar manner. And so ultimately he taught me that, one, we need to show up for ourselves. And then two, the support of one person can make a difference. So if there's anybody out there that has somebody in their life that's just difficult to be dealing with, chances are they just want to be heard. So for all those folks, they're looking for just a little bit of support and looking to be heard, here's 25 for you today. Day 11 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And today I'd like to share with you an observation that was made about me by one of my docs. And it was, Jake, you care too much. You guys have big hearts and you care too much. And I meditated on that for quite some time. And as I met, people dealing with similar issues as I was, I began to realize it wasn't that we just cared. We actually took on responsibility for it. And then one step further, which is that we took on the responsibility to try to change those things. And a lot of those things were out of our control. And so
I know for me, one of the most difficult lessons I had to learn is that I wasn't in control of much. And so I had to reevaluate the things that I needed to work on. And so that was part of my process, which was eliminating the worry, eliminating the stress, eliminating the responsibility of the things that were beyond my control. So for all of those folks that still suffer from feeling like they're out of control, well, here's 25 for you. Hi, everybody. Day 12 of 25 of the PTSD Push-Up Challenge. And today I'd like to share with you specifically this whole idea of vulnerability that's going on, and why I'm able to do what I'm able to do right now. And when I first started to get back to work teaching, I'd taken about 9 months off. And when I came back to it, I didn't trust myself, so I had to create a space for myself in order to be able to fail. Or at least in my eyes, what that looked like is that I still had a lot of triggers and I would cry. Thankfully, I wasn't angry, although it would show up every once in a while. But I would cry a lot. And so I had to create this space where it was okay for me to cry. And ultimately what I found out during that period was that was the space people were begging for. And I can't tell you how many people personally let me know how much they appreciated that, and they were able to share more of what their experience was, and ultimately it helped them heal. So giving people space to be vulnerable is the key. And for all those that still suffer from being able to find a place where they can be vulnerable, here's 25 for you. Hi, everybody. Day 13 of 25 of the PTSD Push-Up Challenge. And since it's hump day, I wanted to start shedding a little bit of light on the process. And, people would often ask me, what do you mean by showing up for yourself? And for me, that looked like I started to cook all of my own meals daily. I started a meditation practice. I started a yoga practice. I started a journaling practice. And I did these things daily. And it took about 2 years before I really started seeing a significant amount of change in how those things were helpful to my process. And so for those folks still out there struggling to find out how to show up for themselves, well, here's 25 for you today.
For all its material advantages, the sedentary life has left us edgy, unfulfilled. Even after 400 generations in villages and cities, we haven't forgotten. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. We invest far-off places with a certain romance. The appeal, I suspect, has been meticulously crafted by natural selection as an essential element in our survival. Long summers, mild winters, rich harvests, plentiful game. None of them lasts forever. Your own life, or your band's, or even your species might be owed to a restless few drawn by a craving they can hardly articulate or understand, to undiscovered lands and new worlds.
Hi everybody, day 24 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And today I'd like to talk with you about my process a little bit more, and the fact that treatment is a process. As I was working as a medic this past week, and I had to bring a helicopter in order to evacuate a crew member who had been injured. I was engaging with one of my triggers, which is helicopters. And while it was not in nearly of a traumatic situation that I had worked around them in the past, it definitely evoked some emotion, and I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised. And so I'd just like to remind folks that there's no real finish line for all this. It's a work in progress, and it's a process. And so while I see progress, I still have to work on my process daily. And thankfully, I'm strong enough to be able to do that. But I'd just like to remind folks that some people need more support with that. And so when people are falling off their horse, and when people are making mistakes and trying to get back into their swing, they need a lot of support. So for those that are still trying to figure out their process, here's 25 for you today. Hi everybody. Day 25 of 25 of the PTSD push-up challenge. And on this last day, I'd like to share with you that, well, whether it was PTSD, whether it was depression, whether it was burnout, whether it was anger, whether it was frustration, it was all a relationship. And that relationship was the only thing I knew for a really long period of time. And I now understand why it's so difficult to make that change, because you have to give a lot up in order to change. And ironically, what you end up, at least for me, what I had to give up were things that needed to be gone from my life. And so if there's anybody out there that's trying to change and is afraid, I too was afraid of that change. And I just want to assure you that all the things you're going to change will be beneficial, and all the things that you leave behind are unneeded anymore. And while it's scary and it seems like the end, it's only the beginning of a brand new start. So for those out there that are still struggling to figure out how to begin the change, here's 25 for you.